Okay, let's get into this. Breakups. They can feel like a physical injury, can't they?
Oh, absolutely. It's visceral.
But sometimes the really, really gutting part isn't even just the sadness of it ending. It's the not knowing, the sheer confusion when someone leaves. And they either say nothing or they give you some, like, flimsy reason isn't the truth.
Right, that leaves you completely adrift.
Yeah, totally lost, questioning everything. Was any of it real? And you're not just heartbroken, you feel, I don't know, invisible. Like your reality didn't even matter.
That lack of an honest explanation, it just adds this whole other layer of, like, psychological torture onto the pain, doesn't it?
Torture is a good word for it.
It really blocks any sense of closure.
Yeah.
You're stuck wrestling with these questions that just circle and circle in your head.
And you start blaming yourself for things you just guess might have been wrong.
Exactly.
Right.
Based on pure speculation, not facts, it can be really damaging.
Which is precisely why we wanted to do this deep dive. We've been looking at a whole lot of material that tries to get at this exact issue, trying to figure out maybe the uncomfortable truths, the difficult reasons why relationships actually fall apart, especially when the official story feels off.
And we should be clear, right? This isn't about finding ways to feel better or validating anyone's actions.
No, definitely not. It's more about facing some potentially challenging ideas we've pulled from different places: psychology, relationship dynamics, even some pretty sharp historical takes attributed to figures like Casanova.
Yeah, some of that material explicitly calls itself a warning.
Right, a warning.
Not necessarily to scare you, but more like a wake-up call to be more aware. So the mission here really is to pull out the key insights from all these angles.
Psychological, relational.
And yeah, even those, let's say, unflinching historical views on desire. To understand the hidden currents that can pull people apart.
And that means looking inward, doesn't it? Thinking about maybe our own stuff, our fears, our habits, how they might have played a part without us even realizing.
It does. We're aiming for clarity here, even if that clarity feels, pretty harsh sometimes.
Okay, so let's dive in. Let's look at some of these core reasons that kept cropping up in the material. And just a heads up, these aren't meant to be easy answers. They're framed as challenging insights, those brutal truths about connection.
Yeah, buckle up a bit. This might sting. But hopefully it sparks some real understanding.
So one of the first points, and honestly one that really jumped out from some of the more provocative material, especially the stuff looking at it through that sort of Casanova lens, is this idea you were too nice. And that niceness, paradoxically, killed the spark, killed the tension needed for desire to last.
Wait. Too nice? It sounds completely wrong, doesn't it?
Right. My first reaction to, isn't being kind, agreeable, good? Isn't that what we're supposed to aim for?
Well, yes, of course. Initially, kindness, consideration, making someone feel good, it's crucial. It builds the foundation. It's part of the attraction. But one perspective we encountered describes excessive, relentless, unconditional niceness as, and this is a direct quote, practically poison in the long run.
Poison. Wow, that's intense. How can being nice be poison?
Okay, so the argument runs something like this. Being constantly available, always patient to the point where you have no backbone, always putting their needs miles ahead of your own.
Which often comes from fear, right? Fear of rocking the boat.
Exactly. Fear of conflict, fear of them leaving. But those behaviors, according to this viewpoint, they actually drain the life force out of romance. This perspective argues that real passion, lasting desire, it needs a bit of space. It needs some tension, maybe even a little healthy friction. It talks about the seductive power of contrast.
So contrast meaning not being a doormat, having your own opinions, your own center of gravity, not just reflecting them back.
Precisely that.
Yeah.
Like one source put it, a relationship without friction is like a song without rhythm. Predictable, flat, dead.
Ouch.
When you're just endlessly agreeable, you risk kind of erasing yourself, becoming totally predictable. And while relationships need safety, becoming completely safe, utterly predictable, well, this view says it turns a potential love story into just a dull routine.
So under this rather harsh light, they might not have left because you did something awful, but because you became so reliably nice that you were boring.
Yeah.
And predictable just couldn't hold their interest long term compared to something more dynamic.
That's the uncomfortable suggestion, yes. It's a really challenging idea.
Especially because it flips virtue into a flaw.
And it ties back to why you might be too nice. Some of the material digs into this, suggesting it often isn't genuine selfless kindness at all.
What is it then?
It's driven by fear, Deep down, it's a fear of losing them, fear of displeasing them, fear of not being enough.
Ah, okay. So if it's fear-based niceness, it's not really kindness. It's kind of like desperation wearing a polite mask.
You nailed it. And that feeling of desperation, whether it shows up as neediness or constant people-pleasing, is pretty much universally seen as unattractive across all the stuff we looked at.
Yeah, you can feel that energy from someone.
Right. Those historical takes, for instance, they suggest that truly magnetic people understand how to use both presence and absence. They know the power of sometimes disagreeing, of creating a little space so the other person can actually miss them, instead of just constantly flooding them with compliance.
So trying to smooth over every single bump, make everything easy.
To kill the drama, the dance, and the desire. It's a serious warning that what felt like being good and kind might have been, if it was excessive or fear-driven, actually pushing them away.
Okay, wow. That's a lot to chew on. And it leads pretty directly into another major point from the material, doesn't it?
It does. The second big warning sign, a lack of genuine empathy, making the other person feel like fundamentally unseen or misunderstood.
This one feels more familiar, maybe. But the way some sources put it was incredibly sharp.
Yeah, very pointed. Suggesting that maybe you heard what they said, but you weren't really seeing the person behind the words.
Missing the nonverbal stuff.
Exactly. Missing the sighs between sentences, the hesitation before they spoke, the flicker in their eyes, the real communication that happens underneath the surface language.
It's that difference between listening, so you can jump in with your own point, versus listening to actually try and grasp their reality, their feeling.
Absolutely. One piece just lays it out bluntly. You are more interested in being understood than in understanding.
Oof, yeah.
And this perspective argues that feeling misunderstood, unseen, is often where the emotional leaving begins, way before the physical departure.
We think people want perfection, maybe, but...
But maybe what they crave more deeply is just to feel truly seen, felt, and understood.
Right.
On a level that goes beyond just, surface chat.
It reminds me of those descriptions of, like, legendary seducers, Casanova included. Part of their power wasn't just looks, it was this intense focus.
Right. Making the other person feel like the most fascinating creature on Earth, like nobody had ever really looked at them before. That level of attention is rare.
And the material suggests that the lack of that kind of empathy shows up in other ways, too.
Yeah, definitely. Like maybe talking way too much about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Or jumping to conclusions about what they mean instead of asking.
Yeah.
Assuming you know best.
Or, and this one stings, judging their mistakes really harshly while making excuses for your own similar slip-ups.
Yes, treating their flaws as character defects and your own as just, circumstances.
That's not empathy at all. That sounds like just defending your own ego.
The material calls that exact pattern ego, not empathy. Plain and simple. Real connection, being truly present, it takes humility. It takes genuine curiosity about the other person's inner world and the patience to actually explore it with them.
And without
that foundation, even if everything else looks good on paper, people can feel incredibly lonely even when they're with you. And the conclusion drawn in some of these sources is pretty stark. Once someone feels emotionally invisible, why would they stay? Maybe for their own well-being, they shouldn't.
It's a heavy reminder about that fundamental human need just to be witnessed, truly seen.
It really is.
Okay, let's move to the third major dynamic that seemed to come up again and again in the material we looked at.
Right. This one's about clinginess, being perceived as clingy, and how that can inadvertently crush the other person's sense of freedom.
Ah, the clinginess factor.
Yeah, it was a recurring theme. That intense need for closeness, needing to know their every move, the constant requests for reassurance.
Which might come from a good place, like love, or maybe anxiety.
Sure, the intention might not be bad, but the impact can feel suffocating, like a heavy weight. One document put it as, love suffocates when you wrap your hands too tightly around it.
Wow.
What you experience as showing affection, they might experience as constant. The term used was emotional surveillance.
Emotional surveillance. That's such a jarring way to put it. Wanting to feel secure in your relationship.
It is jarring, absolutely. But the strong language is deliberate to emphasize how negative it can feel on the receiving end. That constant neediness, the pressure to always check in, the demand for validation, it just sucks the spontaneity out of things.
Makes it feel less like a fun adventure together and more like a cage.
Exactly. And again, drawing on some of those historical perspectives, there's this contrast Presence is vital, yes, but the magic often lies in the space created by absence.
Letting them miss you.
Letting them miss you. Strategic distance allows desire to actually build. It allows them to want to come back to you, rather than feeling obligated.
So that fear of losing them makes you cling tighter.
Which ironically becomes the very behavior that pushes them away. Instead of offering security, you're unintentionally offering them a burden. The burden of your need.
That makes sense. Neediness itself just isn't attractive.
That's the core argument. It's seen as fundamentally unsexy. When you make someone the absolute center of your emotional world, responsible for your happiness, your security, your self-worth, that's an enormous weight to put on another person.
Too much pressure.
Way too much. The material argues it leaves the other person gasping for space, just longing for a bit of freedom.
It comes back to that idea that connection needs to feel freely chosen, right? Not compelled by guilt or need. They should want to be there.
Precisely. Want to connect, want to return, not feel trapped or like they have to manage your emotions.
So the advice isn't hold on tighter.
No, quite the opposite in some ways. One distillation was something like, your main job isn't to grip them hard. It's to cultivate a life and energy, a self that's so compelling, so magnetic, they choose to keep orbiting back to you freely.
Because clinging just screams insecurity, and that you need them to fill some kind of hole inside you.
That's the signal it sends, yeah. An over-reliance.
Which, okay, that flows straight into the final big challenging truth that seemed to emerge from all this material.
Yes, the failure to keep, well, seducing them over time.
Yeah, seducing sounds a bit gamey, but what does it really mean in this context?
It's less about manipulation and more about challenging the idea that once you're official or committed, the effort stops, that the work of attraction and engagement is somehow done.
Right. You settle in, the chase is over. That feels natural, doesn't it? Comfort.
Comfort is good. Comfort is necessary. But what some of this material strongly warns against is complacency. Letting comfort slide into stagnation.
Oh.
The moment you stop actively investing energy in keeping the connection alive, interesting, engaging, basically, when you stop finding ways to subtly pique their interest, keep them curious, make them feel desired. That's when, according to these perspectives, desire starts to fade. Predictability is fine, but when it becomes complete stagnation, it's described as basically suffocating passion.
So stopping the effort, like maybe not bothering with how you look sometimes, or stopping surprising them, or maybe you stop growing yourself. Your conversations become reruns.
All of that. Losing the playful banter. Letting all the mystery just evaporate. It makes you sort of fade into the wallpaper of their life.
That's harsh, but I can see it.
It's a key argument. If you stopped evolving, stopped bringing new energy, new thoughts, new parts of yourself into the dynamic, and if you stop trying to genuinely connect with their evolving self, then the love feels less vital. It risks being taken for granted.
It's not about huge romantic gestures every day, then.
No, not necessarily. It's more about a consistent undercurrent of curiosity and engagement. Keeping that seductive edge, as some put it, not becoming overly available with no boundaries, giving everything away without being asked, removing any sense of playful anticipation.
Because fundamentally, people don't just want stability, right? They also crave aliveness, curiosity, being with someone who still feels like they're growing.
Exactly. Those historical accounts of seduction often talk about the power of revealing things slowly, maintaining a certain depth that keeps the other person fascinated, maybe even a little bit intrigued or slightly off balance.
Not in a mean way, but just enough to keep things from getting totally flat.
Right. It's about staying dynamic, embracing your own changes, and finding ways to surprise and delight them sometimes. Staying interesting.
And if you just stop, become static.
The line from this thinking is pretty clear. Static kills attraction. If you stop moving, changing, actively engaging them, and being compelling in your own right, the energy that initially drew them to you can just dissolve.
Yeah. Okay. So pulling all these threads together from those historical observations to modern relationship stuff, the warnings really seem to cluster around a few key areas.
Yeah.
Watch out for that niceness that's really fear, the kind that smooths out all the interesting edges. Cultivate real empathy, actually see the other person. Recognize that clinging pushes people away. And don't stop engaging, evolving, and subtly seducing.
A pretty confronting set of reflections, isn't it? Holds up a tough mirror.
It really is. And the overall message we distilled from the material seems to wrap this all up, not as just a tragedy, but as a potential, a wake-up call.
Exactly. A painful one, for sure, but a wake-up call nonetheless.
Not saying love wasn't real, but maybe that the deeper mechanics, those dark, subtle laws that govern human desire, maybe they weren't fully grasped or respected in the dynamic.
And across these different sources, historical or psychological, there's this real emphasis on needing to understand those dynamics better. The idea that lasting connection isn't automatic. It's not something you just passively deserve.
It's something you have to actively inspire, moment by moment.
That's the essence of it. Through how you show up, your own passion, your empathy, your ability to stay interesting, and maintain that little bit of captivating mystery or energy.
So the takeaway isn't learn these tricks to manipulate someone next time.
No, God, no. It's about self-awareness. Deeply understanding how your energy, your fears, your habits, your intentions, how all that is actively shaping the relationship weather, so to speak.
Understanding that difference between, say, chasing someone because you're scared they'll leave versus being someone so compelling they want to move towards you.
Exactly. Or the difference between trying desperately to please someone versus genuinely engaging them, maybe even challenging them sometimes.
Controlling versus captivating.
Precisely. Captivating through your own authentic vitality.
And the real challenge, then, coming out of looking at all this, is to actually use this painful experience, not to get cynical, but to get aware.
Super aware.
Yeah.
To maybe burn off some illusions about what keeps love alive, and to really internalize that vibrant connection is something you earn and re-earn.
Through being present, being interested, being empathetic, and crucially, not losing your own spark, the thing that attracted them in the first place.
The warning echoes forward. Next time, try to avoid these pitfalls.
Right.
Don't just be the nice, compliant one because you're afraid.
Don't be there physically, but checked out emotionally, never really seeing them.
Don't smother the connection with your own neediness. Don't become static and predictable.
Instead, try to be someone who gets that interplay of absence and presence, who listens to understand, not just to respond, who keeps growing, keeps finding ways to genuinely engage and, yes, subtly keep that seductive spark alive with your own aliveness.
And maybe the deepest, most unsettling warning that runs through so much of this material is about the danger of needing someone else more than you need your own self.
Needing their approval, their presence, their love, more than you value your own self-respect, your own path, your own boundaries.
According to this perspective, that is self-abandonment in disguise.
Wow.
And it's presented as maybe the single quickest way to sabotage a connection and push someone away for good.
So the final thought to leave people with is, losing yourself in the relationship is the fastest way to actually lose the relationship itself.
That's the provocative idea. A difficult one to sit with, definitely, but one that a lot of different wisdom traditions seem to point towards as a fundamental truth about how connection works. Something to really reflect on.